I can't hear you, mate. Can you hear me? All right. I can't hear you. Live and unscripted as always. First question, before you go any further, mate, I can't hear you. So first question, lovely audience. Can you hear David? I can't. Woohoo! But I still can't hear you. I'll tell you what, I'll crack on. All right. Until we get a message from our lovely audience. Can you hear the fabulous David Bell, who is kicking off the show with the most amazing introduction you would ever have come across? And today's show is all about Ask Us Anything. So the most important question, first of all, can we hear David? I'll tell you what, I'm hoping it rectifies itself, my friend, because I love the idea of answering any questions that the audience want to throw at us, but I can't take them all on board. I need some help. What's going on with the world? Let's have a little look. What does the world say? No. Digital Dave has been silenced. Nobody can hear David. Doesn't mean I've got to do the whole show on my own.
Should we try that? Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Am I back?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. Change microphones. Technical glitch. It has been fixed. So good morning, hello, and welcome everybody. Welcome to the Chatbox Business Breakfast Show. That's how I did start off this morning's session. It's great to be here. Great to have you here. Technicalities aside, funny enough, tech is going to come up in today's show because this morning's show is about Ask Us Anything. And what a great way to kick off. Ask us why the tech didn't work. Ask us why David was silenced. And we'll come up with hopefully some good responses and answers to that. Anyway, Nick, good morning. We can hear you and see you.
Well, phew. I was a little bit flummoxed there, but such is the beauty of a live and unscripted show. we love the fact that it's live and unscripted. Nobody knows what's going to happen. One of the reasons we love that is because odd stuff does happen. And why not? Why, this is life, right? Life's not perfect, and it's never going to be perfect. So our show, our podcast, our video podcast, let's say is anything but perfect because it's live and unscripted. Anything can happen and often does. But today's show, all about Ask Us Anything, and approach with some trepidation. Okay, live and unscripted, ask us anything. Who knows what questions will come in during the show? We've had plenty before the show began, so lots of content to get stuck into. But I'm a massive believer in one of the biggest challenges we have as humans, as business owners, as families, is the ability to ask the right questions. Because chances are the answer is out there somewhere. And certainly with AI, which we're going to be talking about, the answers are very, very quick and well informed. But most of the answers are out there. But asking the right question is the real challenge.
And there's lots of questions that people could ask today as well. As you said, Nick, it could put us in a tight situation. We will answer and try and put an answer to everything that you ask us. Of course, do try and keep it semi-professional. We like a good, a good laugh and a bit of fun. So if you want to kind of go off down a bit of a roller coaster route, then please do so. But I'm only going to answer the questions that I feel I can answer honestly and correctly as well. And if I can't, then I am joined by our AI friend that we could always ask a question to. Maybe we could put a question to her or him. I don't know. Is it gender neutral? It's a question we could ask. But yeah, get your questions coming in. But we've got lots of questions to get through. Thank you for everybody that sent in a question in advance, whether you popped it into one of our chat channels, whether you emailed it into us. And in some cases, I spoke to a few people on the phone as well, the old-fashioned phone questions to put to us, Nick. Or probably actually the ones I've got, I know what they are, because I'm going to put them to you.
Brilliant.
So yeah, if you want to shout out this morning, do comment, do put your question in the box for us. If you don't have a question and you just want us to say hi to you, just tell us who you are, where you are, and what it is that you do, and we'll give you a shout out as well this morning. So look forward to that. So Nick, questions. Should we kick off with one of the questions this morning? And
absolutely, let's get this show on the road, my friend.
So we set the scene and see what's happening out there in the big wide world. Now, this question I've got here, I'm going to kick off with, was emailed to me earlier this week from Lucy Seymour. Good morning to you, Lucy. I assume you'll be watching us this morning as you popped a question and you're going to be looking for an answer. And we're going to do our best to give you the answer. So Lucy is from Manchester. I'm a small business owner and times are really tough. Now, we know that. We've spoken about that in the past, Nick. We'll come on to it. There's been lots of increased costs in my business, including energy costs, supply chain costs, and staff asking for pay rises and more money. What can I do? Now, it's a bit of an open-ended question because we don't know exactly what your business does. So that does kind of doesn't help us too much. So if you are listening, Lucy, tell us what your business does. That will be super useful. But Nick, we're small business owners. I know a lot of people watching the show here are business owners and typically SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises. We know times are tough. We've reported on it week upon week. Energy costs are up. Relief has been taken away on energy costs for businesses. Inflation is at an all-time high, even though it dropped a couple of points. I think it's at 10.5% now. It is challenging out there. Let's not hide that fact. And we know that some people are doing really well, others are finding it really tough. But what would you think about doing? You've got staff that need more money because costs for their living have gone up. Supply chain costs, materials, products, other services you outsource, they've increased their prices. It's a bit of a challenge, really, isn't it?
It's like a perfect storm, right? Probably not the first time most businesses have hit challenges along the road, but there's a mass of challenges. All right, so it depends what industry you're in, depends what your business is in. Some businesses, I imagine, are thriving because they're kind of key need. Everything's a bit more expensive. Let's say the power companies, right? Everyone, it's blooming chilly out there. Everyone needs to put their heating on, right? Power's more expensive. If I'm a power company and let's say I make 10% on whatever I sell, and now I'm selling it at twice the price, I'm making 10% on twice the value, right? So possibly some businesses out there are thriving because of the situation that we're currently in, but most will be facing this perfect storm of everything's more expensive. My staff aren't that happy because the money in their pocket is worth less. And because most people are struggling, most people are keeping their heads down.
Yeah.
So there must be so many businesses out there struggling for multiple different reasons. Right? My customers have disappeared because they haven't got spare money to spend. My staff want more money. How am I going to go out and generate more business or more profitable business in an environment where there doesn't seem to be much? My first port of call, I think, would be to speak to your customers, to truly understand what's going on with them. When you're a speaking gig, and the more you understand your audience, the easier it is to communicate in a way that massively resonates with them. If you start by speaking to your customers, your clients, just seeing how the world looks for them, you can then take a much kind of, let's say, a more informed view of what they are likely to do or what they need from you as a business. Very difficult to know because we don't know what Lucy's business is. But for me, I would start with what's going on with my audience, what's going on with my current clients. Is there anything else I can offer them that would generate some more revenue? Let's start with the easy stuff, right? Let's start with what we know, and that's our customers, our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Top tip there. I think other things to think about, and Lucy, I'm sure you've already done this, but it's worth reminding everybody, is that have a look at your own business. Do a bit of a review. Take some time, a couple of hours, maybe a day, whatever that looks like, to analyze your figures. Have a look through what things can you maybe get better deals on? Can you buy smarter? Could you maybe, changing energy companies is a bit of a no-no really, because it's just not a good practice at the moment. But other things like telephony, mobile phones, if you've got landlines, other things in your supply chain that you might be able to go out and renegotiate on, find better deals. Because I think there's lots of organizations out there that want to retain customers. So by going and having a chat with them, you might find you can get a better deal. You might have to re-sign a contract or something like that for a period of time. So do be wary when you get to that point. But see what things that you can reduce, but not lose the quality of what you're doing. Because, I see quite a lot of people, what they do is they tighten up the old purse strings and they get rid of that and get rid of this. And that can affect their operational side of their business. So I think you've got to be careful. You don't go and cut everything to reduce the cost and then realize that your own product or your own service level diminishes as well. So be wary of that. But go out and renegotiate. See what things maybe you're paying for that you didn't realize you're paying for. That audit could be really, a cost-saving audit. You might find, and again, I've seen this in businesses in the past, but certainly sort of the medium-sized to larger-sized businesses in the communications world, where they had, multiple phone lines, and it used to be once upon a time fax lines and stuff like that coming into the building, and they were just sitting there doing nothing, but they were paying the monthly, quarterly rental on that service, but didn't even use it. And when you actually do that audit, and that's just on one particular element of a business, there's money to be saved. So reevaluate in your own business. I would also say take the time and sit down with your staff, reassure them, look, it is tough. I'm going to do what I can. I want to make sure you're looked after. You're integral to my success or the success of the business overall, and we will work with you. Please, from the other side, don't go on strike. We don't like strikes. I know they have a place, and we've spoken about it a lot in the past, but I think for most probably watching this today, they probably don't have staff that are going to go on the picket line and stand there with their placards and blaming it all on Maggie Thatcher from back in the 80s. But I think you've got to just be sensible. Reduce costs, talk to your customers, if you said, Nick, have them conversations, and speak to your team as well and listen to what they're suggesting.
Yeah, they might have some really good ideas. No doubt they will have some really good ideas of how to make the business more efficient and generate more business. And then they feel that there's more ownership. Your staff are more kind of involved. They've embraced the current issues, and as a team, you can move forward. And a great top tip there, mate. Right, instant money saver. Cancel all your fax lines. Right, you're not using them. Unless you're in America, you're not using your fax. Okay, cancel those lines. Save yourself a few quid.
Yeah. It could be, put it into modern day terms, it could be you've got, you're using Office 365, you're paying for additional licenses. They're only, £10 a month maybe, but you've got 3 extra licenses because you've reduced your team or you're not using those mailboxes now. And I suppose that's the equivalent the fax line was once upon a time. So, you could go through and say, well, we don't need that mailbox. It's not being used. That user doesn't exist anymore. So we'll get rid of it. And it might be that you haven't downscaled. You might have brought a new member of the team on, given them a new mailbox, so they're all up and running, but never kind of cancelled the old one because you think you just keep it there just in case kind of attitude. So sometimes just an audit, a refresh, looking in your facts, your figures, your numbers, seeing what's happening. And my last tip on this, never bury your head in the sand. If something is kind of happening and maybe you're getting pushed for money, the energy company, you've got a bill that's outstanding or something like that, pick up the phone. Talk to the person at the other end if you can get through. Go onto the chat site, as it might be these days, and just explain things are tough. What do I need to do? Have that open conversation. I think as soon as you bury your head in the sand, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't go away. It just makes it worse.
Sound advice. We are up and running on Ask Us Anything. So, ladies and gents, feel free to, wherever you're viewing or listening to the show, jump on the chat and fire some quick fire questions at David, and if you have to, at me too. So here's another question. Came in. Here's a screen grab of the question. Came in from the wonderful Keith Smith. Check out Keith on LinkedIn from the Advertist and the Fuel podcast. Awesome. If you're not connected to Keith on LinkedIn, then you're missing a trick. What's your recipe for a perfect work-life balance?
Great question. Wow. I think this is different for all of us, depending on where we are in our journey of running a business. Our age will play a big effect into this. Our family will, if you've got children. I think so. Obviously, it's going to be different for all. And I've got my own way of dealing with this. If you ask my younger self, when I was 17, 18, starting my business, I was all in. I was eating pizzas in the office, drinking Red Bull, didn't exist then, but drinking other sugary drinks, coffee, caffeine, keep me awake, and sleeping on the sofa, because that was the lifestyle that I kind of led that early on in a kind of an early tech company. But today, look, I'm in bed by 9:30, 9:45. I'm there and I'm up pretty early. For me, everything is about family time. I need that balance. So I do work hard and probably work like most, longer hours than probably expected. But for me, weekends, unless there's a particular reason, so there's some things that I've got coming up this year, which I've already committed to doing some Saturdays, my weekends are family time. Friday afternoon, I block out my diary, 3:00 onwards, that's when my weekend starts. And that time is then spent with my wife, my daughter, my friends, and my family doing fun things. So that for me is trying to balance that out. And I try to knock off every day at 6:00. Doesn't always happen. But as we know, as business owners, we dip in here and there and get things done. And I think if you enjoy it, as long as you're enjoying it, then find the balance that works for you. So for me, family is a big draw, getting that balance, having that time at weekends, and making sure plenty of time out to do the fun things as a family as well. So going up to London to the theatre, I've done a lot of that over the last several months with my daughter and my wife. So for me, that's the balance. It's about making sure actually there's more fun in my personal life than the business side of things. And I don't need to aspire now to be a billionaire or anything. So I'm not having to put in silly amounts of hours.
That's quite disciplined. I know as a young business owner, I got it all wrong. Not dissimilar to you. I'd work ridiculous hours, felt as though I had to do everything, wasn't really confident enough to offload some of the stuff that I didn't like doing and wasn't very good at. So I was kind of juggling, as far too many balls, and no doubt dropping some along the way. And as I've got older, I've got, I guess, a bit more stubborn about what I'm prepared to do and what I'm not prepared to do. I think something that happens helps me with my work-life balance is the permission. I give myself permission to say no to stuff. Right? If it looks rubbish, I ain't doing it. Right? My two rules are for clients anyway, for business, is are they courageous? In other words, is the stuff we're going to do going to make a difference, and is it going to be any fun? All right, and if I can't tick both of those boxes, then it's a serious exploration before I'm going to agree to it. A question for the audience, all right, before I finish answering this one, is how much fun are you having at work?
Or not?
Jump on the chat. Are you having a load of fun at work or not? Because if you're not, then we need to stop a moment and ask some questions. One of the issues we've got of our work-life balance is this, mate. All right, it's very, very difficult unless you're disciplined, like you are, to leave the business alone, because the fruit machine in your pocket is going to be kind of knocking, kind of saying, hold on a minute, what about this email? What about this message? What about this client?
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously, probably anyone watches the show regularly, I love tech. It's kind of my business has been built around tech or on tech, and I'm looking at other opportunities in the tech world as well. So my phone and my watch and many other devices, smart devices, are part of my lifestyle. And that is quite hard to balance. You're right, Nick, because you've got that in your pocket and it buzzes. That could be an email. And it's very hard, if you know it's there, not to have a quick peek at it. So yes, I have a discipline, but I won't say I'm perfect. I'm far from it, because I will pick up and I will respond, and I will send a WhatsApp, or, it might be business related, but I'm quite controlled. I think in most cases, if it's urgent and needs a response, then I will. If it's something that can wait till tomorrow, then I will. If it's not going to disturb someone else, then I will. And I think it's just finding your own balance in that side of things as well. But I just try not to be immersed, locked away, stuck in a room working, when I should be having that time with the family. I think that's the balance. But my phone is everything. It's my camera, is, if you know, for all of us, we've got that tool. It's a Swiss Army knife, isn't it? It does so much. So very seldomly is it locked away, turned off, and not in view. We try to know when we sit down for dinner, make sure it's not there and stuff like that. But from time to time, breakfast, I might be reading the news, catching up on what's happening in the world. It's the modern newspaper, isn't it? The day of having the newspaper there, I've kind of moved to my tablet and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you've got to find what works for you, and it's different for everybody.
Yeah, and I think you need to certainly assess how much fun are you having. Is there joy in it? Because there's no balance if there's no joy and fun. Right? It's all hard work. It's all graft. It's so very, very difficult. Certainly, let's say Lucy's situation where she's under big business pressure. Very difficult to kind of separate that. And I guess at sometimes we'll be much better at it than others. But I think it's a lifelong process, getting better and better, and give yourself permission to say no to the crap.
Yeah. James O'Rourke's put in 100%. My phone is my weakness, too accessible. So very similar to me, James. In fact, I've got a question here. James has sent a couple of questions. I'm going to, as that was perfect timing, James, I'm going to pick up on one of his questions. And I'm going to pick up on this one, which is his third of three questions that he put across to us. Possibly one for Analog Nick. That'll be for you, sir.
Come on.
Do you see AI, chatbots, and more specifically, the rise and use of ChatGPT, we'll talk about that in a second, as a threat or an opportunity for better communication? So there's quite a lot involved in that particular question. So we're talking about AI, chatbots, ChatGPT. We'll explain what that is in a second. Do we see it as a threat, or do we see it as a way of better communicating? Now, the communication expert here in the room, what's your first thoughts on that, Nick?
Okay, do you want to just explain what ChatGPT is, just in case any of our lovely audience aren't aware of almost the latest AI sensation?
Yeah. Now, if people have probably been seeing the word ChatGPT appear, possibly in social media and stuff like that, if you're on the social media channels, which I assume you are because you're watching us here. But ChatGPT is a chat box, basically, or it's a chat bot, and it was launched by a company called OpenAI back in November 22. So we're talking, very, very recent. Now, what ChatGPT allows you to do, it allows you to pretty much ask it any question you like, and in response, you will get answers. And what it does, it goes off, and I suppose the best way to describe it, it goes off and looks at all the content that's out there in the internet that's been written, has been stored, and it kind of takes snippets from everywhere and then compiles its answer using all that data and all that information. So it's not actually recreating content, it's taking all the content and rejiggling it back together. But it's mind-boggling and it's mind-blowing, and it's only at its very beginning. And I do see this being a huge future in basically AI communication, things like writing blogs, writing content, dare I say, Hollywood shows will be, we were talking about this just before we went live this morning, but there is scenarios where they're writing scripts using this now. And of course, this does all the work for you, but it's pretty much instantaneous as well. Ask it a question, bump, comes a response. And you can ask it the same question again, you'll get a different response. And they kind of almost, I won't say guarantee, because there's no way of getting your money back kind of idea, but they pretty much guarantee you're never going to get the same output, the same response twice. So everything is unique in that respect. So it's super useful. There's other things out there, but ChatGPT, if you haven't looked it up, have a look at it. Just Google it, sign up for a free account and have a play. You'll be blown away.
So the question, is it a threat? Is it an opportunity? Is it a threat? Yes. Is it an opportunity? Yes. Sorry, James, but yeah, I think it's not going away. Right? AI is just going to get better and better and better and better. Is it a threat? Absolutely right. If you rely on creativity for your livelihood, then there's AI out there that will do it in a flash. And it'll be difficult to recognize, was that AI or was that human? So if, let's say you work at a university, you're a university professor, and it won't be long before you cannot tell the difference between that essay was written by a student, that essay was written by AI, or that essay was marked by a professor, or that essay was marked by AI. So it does throw the question, so what happens to those industries? What happens to universities? What happens to creative industries, graphic designers? What happens to the legal industry? There's a case in America, first one of its kind, where the defendant has hired a AI legal team, right? So it's not humans, it's AI. So what happens to the legal world? What happens to anything that relies on data and being creative with that data? Not quite sure, but it looks as though AI is going to be a massive challenge to that. Is it an opportunity? Of course, it's an opportunity. If you can embrace it into your, let's say, into your business, if you can let AI do a lot of the heavy lifting, and in my world, what I want the technology to enable more human. So if AI's got this bit, then surely I can go out and see more people. I can spend more human time. My fear is that people won't do that. They won't spend more human time. They'll spend more time on TikTok because AI has got this and everything else. I've got more time on my hands, so I'll waste it.
It's really interesting.
Yes and yes.
Yeah. Diane Morton's put, this sounds awesome. Opportunity, I think. So she thinks it's the opportunity. I think you're right, Nick. It's both. I think there's huge opportunity there with this AI generated content, whether it's writing, art as well. We've touched on this in the past, and we kicked off. I mean, in the middle of last year, we showed the front page of the Cosmopolitan. I think it was, wasn't it, where the front cover was generated by AI. But that's now accessible to us all. If you just put in AI art, up come all the various platforms and software apps that you can use for free in some cases, but for very little money. You can generate art, which is absolutely unique, and you'll never get the same picture out twice. But what it does do, it does go off and takes bits of other pictures. And there's a big question around who owns the copyright or the legal right to that once it's being redesigned and rebuilt, even though it's taken a snippet of a Monet or something like that. It's very interesting, and there's no rules being written around this yet, no laws, so it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. But great question that James put to us there, and I'm going to go down the route. I think it's an opportunity. Does it allow for better communication? Human communication, no, but content communication, possibly yes.
So it'll write a blog for you, okay?
Very
but
well.
It won't be able to have a human-centric conversation over a cup of coffee, or will it?
Yes.
Will you? Right? How long in the future before? Okay, it's really cold outside. I'm gonna make my own coffee, and I want to have a chat with, let's say, a Hollywood A-lister, right? So I go onto AI, type in, I don't know, Marlon Brando, okay, and AI has got everything that Marlon Brando's ever said, done, whatever. So I can have a cup of coffee in theory with Marlon Brando, and it will do the voice and everything, and I won't need to go down the road and speak to other humans because I got Marlon Brando on tap or someone else. How long? And realistically, I don't think very long. If it's not already here, I think it's just around the corner.
Yeah, the thing is, if you use another really good one for any of our audience want to have a look at, called Jasper, okay, Jasper, just Google it, comes up. Again, it's another AI that does really good content creation. It does art creation as well using AI. But what it can do is that you actually ask it for its voice. So how you want it to be. So if you put in Samuel L. Jackson, it would give you the response as if it was Samuel Jackson writing that content. So it would have that kind of voice of reason behind it. So you can also put in there you want it to be fun or professional. You can use keywords to create what you want that content to read like or sound like to the reader reading it, and potentially listening to it as well, because obviously that can be turned into an audio format and stuff. So it's really interesting. We're just scraping the surface, and I do see the likes of AI coming together with virtual reality and, this whole AR, VR, XR world where you currently put your headsets on, you go in there and you'll be talking to these bots. So imagine all of this. This is Terminator coming, isn't it? In one way, we should be a little bit concerned and maybe a little bit worried. But great question, James. Hopefully we've answered that the best that we can. What's next, Nick? What have you got?
I got a question for you. What do you take for granted?
Oh, that's a tough.
You can have a think about it. An audience, think about that as well. What is it that you take for granted? I tell you what I take for granted, or have taken for granted: good health.
Yeah,
and you plow along, right? I'm definitely the wrong end of middle age. You plow along, right? Invincible, right? And then something happens, and it stops you in your tracks. You think, oh crap. Hold on a minute. I thought I was invincible, but now I've got to deal with this or deal with that. I think far too many of us take good health for granted, certainly in our fast-paced consumer crazy world. So yeah, I would say in the past I've taken good health for granted.
yeah,
What about you, mate? What do you take for granted, my friend?
Health is definitely one of them. I suppose for me, when you actually want to sit down and start to think about these things, I suppose it's just day-to-day stuff as well. The fact that I have a roof over my head, I have a car sitting outside, I'm able and capable and in a good place in my own life. I have a loving and caring family and fantastic friends. And sometimes we take all this for granted. Sometimes if we sit back and, not like I say we should sit there and compare or contrast, but, we look at others. There's people in far worse situations than I could ever comprehend. And I think sometimes we need to understand that. And that's, for me, one of the reasons I like to give back as well. I like to do something that's meaningful and I hope is helping others to better their life. And that it can be in all various shapes and sizes. I do lots for, as we know, with startup businesses, giving up time, going into universities, education and stuff like that, because I'm a great believer in the next wave of our young entrepreneurs, those that are going to come on and bring this technology to the forefront, such as AI and VR and stuff like that. So I think sometimes we just need to sit back and reflect and be appreciative to what we have.
That's a nice idea as we head towards the weekend, Thursday being the new Friday and all, is just to reflect and just ask that possibly tough question: what am I taking for granted? And don't take it for granted so much. Do something about that. Another question for you, mate. All right, and this we've asked this question many times of our lovely guests. What one piece of advice would you give to your younger self? Right, go back in time, tap younger David on the shoulder and go, you don't know me, but we look similar. Here's one piece of advice for you. Best of luck. Cheerio.
I'd have so many pieces of advice.
You've only got one.
If I've only got the one, there's many things I would go back and tell my younger self. But I wouldn't want to change the path that I've been on, because I think that's quite important for me. People say, "Well, would you go back and change that?" And as much as you kind of think, "Well, do you know what? I wouldn't," because the outcome that where I've got to today has been, I'd almost explain it as the perfect outcome. I don't know any different. But that one piece of advice, if I could go back, I would probably advise myself: never bury your head in the sand. I mentioned it earlier, so this is probably why it's at the forefront of mind. It's very easy when things are not going your way, things get a little bit out of control. Maybe that, they spiral out of control through no fault of your own. That it's very easy just to try and bury your head in the sand and make it go away. If I don't think about it, it would disappear. And I think you need to confront any challenge head on, deal with it there and then. What's the worst that can happen? Someone always said to me, there's nothing that should phase you. The question is, ask yourself any time, what's the worst that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that you die. That is the worst thing. But other than that, if you're still alive and you're still breathing, then everything else shouldn't be too much of a concern. You just need to take these things, tackle them head on. So don't bury your head in the sand would be probably my biggest piece of advice. I've got loads of others. I could stack them up and reel them off. Relationship.
and then the young David will be running down the street saying, "This weirdo keeps giving me advice. Help, help." I think that there's another side to that. What's the worst that can happen, and it's what's the best that can happen. Okay, open up that conversation in your head as well. So I totally get that. Burying your head in the sand is not an answer, is it? Just get on with it, and have a look. What's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? For me, I think if I tap myself on the shoulder, young Nick, I would suggest just be more courageous, Nick. I think there must be times in my past where I've not been courageous enough. Right? There's certain things I've not done because I've looked at what could go wrong, or the aspects around the fear of particular things. I think if I'd been encouraged as a very young man by older Nick to say, just you can do this, right? Just be more courageous. I think I would have had a lot more fun along the way. It may not have happened that way. It might have been a disaster, but I think it would have been quite a boost to younger Nick.
Yeah. I'm a great believer of what will be will be. Things happen for a reason. I'm a little bit a believer of fate, right time, right place, and stuff like that. But I think you do make your own luck in life to a degree. If you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not having those conversations, if you're not, getting out and meeting people and stuff like that, then you're not in the right place. So maybe those things won't happen to you. It's very easy to look at people and go, "Oh, they get all the luck." There's a reason for that, but probably because they do integrate themselves. They are pushing themselves that little bit further and a little bit, a little bit further and a little bit more around that situation that's in hand. So for me, get out there, do the great things, make your own luck in life as well. Got another question here from James. As two award-winning business owners yourselves, well, that'd be you and me, Nick. Thank you very much, James, for picking up on that. What would be the one big idea you'd like our government to do that would really make a difference to small businesses? What a great question. So one thing that the government could do, and I'm going to use the assumption of this being the here and now, what could they do to help small businesses? I think there's lots of things we'd love them to do. They're never going to do. But I think for me, one of the things that they should do is listen to the business community. SMEs, the small to medium-sized enterprises, make up around about 95% of all businesses in the UK. It's a huge amount. And they should be listening more to what small businesses need, what small businesses want, and be providing support around that. So it could be select funding to help growth and development. We used to have lots of that through, dare I say, Europe. And when Brexit kicked in, the government promised pots of money to help businesses through grants and training and various things. And I don't think they've really delivered on that. I appreciate money is an essence, but I think they need to do more. I think they need to listen to businesses, really listen to what they need, and take action on that. And I don't mean necessarily tax cuts and stuff like that. We've got to pay our taxes. But I do mean listen to what businesses need, that support, that connection, that door opening. The whole Brexit thing, we're not going to talk about it, but it's a mess. The strikes are causing chaos for small businesses that can't ship their goods, around the country due to Royal Mail and stuff like that. There's so much going on that is hurting businesses today. So listen, be my tip.
Sound advice. And I know there's lots of government ministers, big fans of the show. They very rarely put anything in the chat, of course, because they're incognito big fans. It makes sense. And I think that's a lesson for most of us. Just listen. Probably listen, right? Distraction-free, active listening. There's an art to it. It's a really good question, a tough one. I think I'd love our audience to get involved. What would you want the government to do for you and your business? For in my view, just get out of the way. Right, just leave us alone, okay? Because we're entrepreneurial enough to be able to create, a decent business for ourselves and for our clients and for our staff. Just get out of my way. All right, leave me alone. just stop applying rules and regulations and red tape and this, that, and this, that. As long as we're sticking to the law, right? Can you just leave me alone to get on with it? The amount of time that most businesses must just lose in varying accounting practices, that the government want to know this and that, and can't you make all of that stuff much easier? Make VAT returns easier, make everything else just easier. All right, it's possibly more complex than it needs to be. Don't know, I'm not a finance expert, but just get out of my way. All right, leave me alone, let me just get on with it. That may or may not be good advice.
Simplification. Yeah, make things simpler. There is a lot of red tape, more red tape than I can ever remember in running businesses. And I think they need to help streamline those processes, make it simpler, easier, more manageable, and more controllable for business owners. And that is of all sizes. Micro businesses, people that want to start a business, they have very little knowledge or understanding about running a business. Help them, get their business off the ground, help them generate a livelihood.
If you've got to a point in government where you can make these big decisions, chances are you weren't running a business at some point, so you've not stood in those shoes. I'd like to think if you've got something to do with business in government, you have run businesses. Right? It might be the case, I don't know, but if you should have that real life experience, surely. It's a bit like doing business studies at university. If the professor's never run a business, then it's all theory, right? I think if the professor has, or whoever's teaching you has run a business before, has felt the ups and downs, know what it looks and feels like, then I think that's a better lesson. Getting plenty of feedback in the chat. Hi, Laura. Lovely to welcome you again into our lovely audience. Really enjoying the show this morning. Fantastic. What does John say? Hello, John. Lovely to hear from you.
John.
If you make it easier, you don't need so many civil servants.
And you won't have so many strikes. Look at that.
That could be a good thing, right? I don't know how many civil servants there are, but there are a lot of them, and they're as far as I understand it, working incredibly hard. But if there's excess, then a more streamlined process might reduce a bit of cost, maybe.
And John Brandler is an absolute art expert, been one of our guests on the show before. John, I don't know if you heard at the beginning of the show, we were talking about AI art, so using today's technology to repurpose the art that's out there and make something unique. John, I'd love to know what your opinion is on this as an art expert and an art dealer and owning a fantastic gallery and doing some very interesting stuff. What do you think about this world that we are now in, that AI goes off and steals all these, and I'll use the word steals, but borrows, takes parts of various images and rebuilds them and creates something new? Is that going to be damaging to the art industry?
Here's a challenge, right? And John will be able to answer this much better than you and I can. Okay, if there was a gallery created and the artwork was all AI created artwork, okay, and it didn't have the sign up, right? But every piece of art, whatever it might be, was created by AI, and I walked into the gallery, would I know?
Very interesting.
Let's say at the moment, I imagine that AI art is either 3D printed or it's 2D, right? It's pictures as opposed to sculptures and various other things. I guess, I don't know, but would I as a, just to say, general public, no art expert, would I know the difference? And if I won't, does that create a problem?
Yeah, he's put the answer in. Let me just pick it up on the screen. I knew John would have an opinion on this.
Brilliant. I love this show.
And I've not read what I'm about to display on the screen, so let's hope it's
Come
clear.
on.
John has put, it's not art, it's the machine that creates it. But is it art if nobody knows a machine created it? And it could have been shown a program on your computer, anybody's computer, where you can pick 3 random words, because that's how it works. You can use more, but and then tells us the AI style to make it. So yes, it can be done. What is it? What would I call genuine out there that's up to our listeners. And I get that. That is up to the listeners, what they would classify as art, because art is personal, isn't it? But John is right. It's 3 random words, or you can use more or less, and it will then go off and, build up this art. So is it art? John thinks it's not art. The machine creates it. But if nobody knows the machine creates it.
So one of the issues, one of the threats around the creative industry, if AI can do it, can they do it? Can they do it well enough that we won't know the difference? And if that, and I believe it can, does that mean, that it's as good as or better than anything that we could produce? And does it really matter whether it's been produced by AI or whether it's been produced by a human if most of the audience can't tell the difference? What if it's better?
And
that's very subjective in creativity. But where does that put us? Right, us beautifully creative humans, if the technology that we've invented can do it like that, and it's taken, let's say, it took me 2 years to write my book, right? Blood, sweat, and tears. And then AI could probably get as many blooming readers as I could in 20 seconds. Right? Does that mean I'm a fool trying to write my next one? Or should I just let AI write it?
Yeah. I want to be a published author. I'm not at the moment, but maybe one day my book will be written by AI. Okay, we're getting close to the end of today's show. Another question here. This was James's 3rd question, so I'm going to pick up on this one. We're 3 weeks into 2023, and many people have given up their New Year's resolutions already. I actually think Quitter's Day was Friday the 13th of January. So how is David getting on with his plan to learn sign language? And is it as hard as he thinks it is? So I will kick off with that. Yes, lots of people will set New Year's resolutions. And my goal, I didn't necessarily call it a New Year's resolution, but I did create it at the beginning of the year. But my goal is this year to learn basic sign language. I've kind of shared that here on the show. And have I started? Honestly, no. I've downloaded a few things to start looking through. I've had a bit of a browse, but have I put the time into it yet? No, I need to make that time, but I haven't quitted, certainly not on Friday the 13th, and I'm not going to quit. And by the end of this year, live on the show, I will demonstrate my basic knowledge of sign language. There we go.
We're up and running. We'll have a sign language conversation. And someone who actually knows sign language will tell us what we are getting right or getting wrong.
James is not the nail on the head, by the way. He actually did put, you could have used it at the start when you had no sound. Absolutely. I was trying to. I was giving it the expressions, and we got there in the end.
And Laura's joined in the art conversation. Art should come from the person based on emotions and personal experience. And John has kind of referenced that by it's the flaws in artwork that give its real signature. Right? It's because nothing's perfect. All right, and if that's what we're looking for, then AI will probably give us the closest, I guess, view of that. But we don't want that, right? Because we're human. Right? So if something's got flaws, like our show, can you believe it? And that's okay. That's okay.
It's real life, live and unscripted. Yeah.
I'm sure AI can do a show, right? 2 AI bots can do this, surely. But they'll probably get it a bit more right than we will. And who wants that?
Yeah, they won't stumble as I every now and then I do. Chat GP, what? I got there in the end this morning. Last question I've got here in front of me come from a gentleman called Mark Hewitt. Good morning to you, Mark. What is the biggest communication challenge going to be in 2023? Well, that's an expert question to an communication expert in the room here, Nick. What do you foresee being the biggest challenge this year in the world of communication?
I think that there are lots of challenges. I think if I had to just pluck one of them, from my perspective, from a human-centric perspective, I think it's laziness. is a massive, massive challenge to us, because our technology is cheap, easy, convenient. It isn't the same. We don't get the same human-centric feel when we communicate via our tech, as opposed to a human-centric communication. But it takes more work. It's harder to do the human stuff than it is just to ping a message, or just do a one-way tech-based communication. I think there are lots of challenges down the road. Tech's brilliant for some stuff. I just don't think we've nailed the human bits of it. It's too easy to let the tech do the heavy lifting. So I think 2023, the big challenge is to work a bit harder at the human stuff. The thing is, we don't want to work harder. We want to work less. We want it to be easier. We want AI to do it for us. Okay, and it will. So before you send your next message, right, just consider, okay, does it have to be a message? And if so, how can I add a little sprinkle of human in there? But take it from me, it's more difficult. It's far more difficult.
And probably going to get more difficult as time goes on as well. And there's so many platforms of communication now. You have to be on everything. You know, there's so many different ways of speaking. John's right, though. I was going to use these words as you were talking, Nick. It went through my head. Work smarter, not harder. There is an element of that as well, isn't there? I mean, you're suggesting, obviously, we have to work harder at ourselves, and I totally agree. But there is
it's just harder to have a conversation, pick up the phone and have a conversation, than it is to ping a quick message. Yeah. Right? There's more meaning in a phone conversation. You get more value from it, but it's much harder. It's more of a commitment. People don't pick the phone up anymore. Right? Why would they? Because they just do a WhatsApp message. So I think it's laziness is probably a bit harsh. Okay, it's just more convenient to do it another way, but you lose a dose of the empathy, the rapport, the resonance that you create in a human interaction, and that's not a good thing. So just be careful, be mindful out there. I think across 2023, saying, have I taken the easy route? And if so, why?
Yeah, great advice. Lots of questions this morning. We've kind of pretty much reached the end of the show. One of our New Year's resolutions was, because way we're kind of taking Chatbox over the coming weeks and months and throughout 2023, we're going to be taking this and packaging it up into our new podcast series, kicking off very, very soon. So we're trying out new things throughout January, shorting our shows, not today's show, but bringing them down to slightly shorter shows so they package up better for podcasts and stuff like that as well. So if you tuned in this morning, thank you very much. If you've asked a question, thank you very much. We will be doing this as a regular show on a monthly basis. Ask Dave and Nick anything. So maybe that will spark a reason for you to start noting down questions you want to put to us in the future. And we're going to make it kind of a show that's going to always be there at the forefront, fun, interactive, and us giving our honest opinions and feedback as well.
Sounds blooming marvellous. And we've covered some ground. We're definitely not experts, but hopefully we've sparked some conversations for you lovely listeners at home or in the office. Hopefully some of the topics that we've approached will be good coffee fodder for conversations for you to have at home and at work too. Until next week, mate. It's that time already.
Yes, yeah, we're back next Thursday from 8 a.m. I will be here loud and proud. You'll better hear me next week from the outset. I won't be, I wasn't muted. Check the microphones out afterwards. But yes, we're back here next week from 8 o'clock. Do tune in for another Chatbox Breakfast Show. Till then, it's bye-bye from me.
And cheerio from me.